Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. People often ask me, how near are we to the end? How much time do we have left? Well, I'm here to tell you today that those questions are no longer relevant. We don't have any time left. We are at the end right now. And God is sending us many, many signs that we are at the end. And one of those very sure signs is that your co-prophet is unsealing the prophecies of Daniel. The angel tells Daniel that his prophecies would be sealed up until the very end. Let's look at Daniel chapter 12, verse number 4. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. And verse number 9. And he said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. But how did Daniel seal up his prophecies? Well, this is the very interesting part. As I have been explaining, in this series on the Abomination of Desolation, which Daniel describes in his last 5 chapters, he uses many Hebrew literary devices, such as pairs, parallelism, chiasms, and so on. And each chapter is a little different. Now, in this particular program, I want to talk about Daniel chapter 7, which is not part of the Abomination of Desolation series, but it does lead up to those chapters. And once again, Daniel uses a completely unique structure. And once we understand the structure, we find that there is a prophecy in the structure itself, and we understand the prophecy. So let's take a look at the structure of Daniel chapter number 7. In order to understand the hidden structure of Daniel chapter number 7, first you must recognize that he uses the word for 2 times in each of 3 different verses. Verses number 6, 17, and 23. And in order to figure out how he has arranged these verses for our understanding of the secret prophecy, you must line those verses up in a horizontal line and let the other verses follow where they may. Verse number 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now, of course, we know from my previous programs that this refers to Barack Obama because he is our 44th president. And now verse number 17. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Notice how Daniel had to kind of express this in an awkward fashion in order to get his 2 fours in. He could have just said, for example, these great beasts are 4 kings. But no, he had to get in 2 fours because he is tying these verses together very much on purpose. And verse 23, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Notice again how Daniel used a rather awkward phrase in order to squeeze in 2 fourths. He could have just said, the 4th kingdom upon earth shall be diverse from all kingdoms. But he had to get those 2 fours in order to relate verse 23 with verse 17 and verse number 6. Now, in order to get all these verses to line up in a logical pattern so that verses 6, 17, and 23 are in a horizontal line, then verses 1 through 5 must appear on the upper left, just above verse number 6, followed by verses 7 through 11, And then we have to jump up here to the center for verses 12 through 16, just before verse 17. Then we have to skip this middle space and jump up the first 18 through 22 before verse 23. And then we conclude with verses 24 through 28. Now you might ask, how do we know Daniel did not want these verses rearranged in a chiasm? In other words, verses 12 through 16 could have been placed in reverse down here, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and still have verses 6, 17, and 23 line up. The same way with all the verses on this side of the column. Verses 18 through 28 could have been arranged this way, upside down, and still the three key verses could line up. So Daniel has to verify that this is how he wants these verses rearranged. He does this by having verses 24 through 28 relate to verses 7 through 11. In fact, we'll find that verse 24 follows verse 7 better than verse number 8. Let's take a closer look. Verse 7, After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the rest with its feet. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now the verse that follows does make sense, verse number 8. I considered the horns. But verse number 24 actually follows better. And it had 10 horns, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Notice that this follows, verse 24 follows verse number 7 much more logically. And the same with verses 8 and 25. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. This, by the way, the little horn is the Antichrist. The 3 horns plucked up are Britain, America, and Russia. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now the next verse is about judgment. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. But if we look at verse number 25, it follows much more logically. And a mouth speaking great things, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. In other words, Daniel is verifying with these verses that the structure he wants is as I have already explained. Now verse number 9 is about judgment, and verse 26 starts, but the judgment shall sit. Verse 10 and 27 are not quite as obvious, but verse 28 definitely follows verse number 11. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body was destroyed, and given up to the burning flame. Now this is the very end. And Daniel says so in verse 28. Hitherto is the end of the matter. This is a much better conclusion to verse number 11 than verse number 12. So this is how Daniel sealed up the prophecies of chapter number 7 until the time of the end. This hidden structure hides 2 very important prophecies. First of all, the structure itself. Notice there are 6 verses above the verses 6, 17, and 23. 6, 6, 6. And those 6 verses are followed by 5 verses, 7 through 11, and 24 through 28. And that is the exact same message that Daniel has given in each of his last 6 chapters, the vision chapters. And that is that the Antichrist, 666, will be defeated by Mary's rosary, which is symbolized by the number 555. I know this is very difficult for many of you to understand, But this is why the angel told Daniel to seal it up until the time of the end. In fact, the entire book of Daniel follows this same pattern. Don't forget, chapters 10 and 12 are actually one and the same chapter. And thus we have the first 6 historical chapters of Daniel, followed by the 5 vision chapters. And therefore, once again, we see that 6, the number of the Antichrist, is followed by 5, the number of Mary's rosary. And Jesus follows this exact same pattern in the verse structure of Matthew chapter 24. And Ezekiel follows the same pattern in his chapters 37 and 38. And all of these examples verify the prophecy way back in Genesis 3:15 that Mary and her seed will crush the serpent and his seed, the Antichrist. But of course, Satan does not want you to know how his head will be crushed and how his Antichrist will be defeated. The other purpose of this hidden structure is to understand better the prophecy about the little horn and the one-world communist tyranny. And that's why these last verses on either side of the structure explain each other and add to our understanding of the prophecy. And so we see this is how Daniel sealed up the prophecy of chapter number 7 according to the directions of the angel. And this prophecy is being unsealed now. We have no more time left. This is the end time. As the angel said, Daniel's prophecies would be sealed up until the very end. That very end is now. There is no more time left. And as always, I offer a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled, for those of you who may still be interested. You can write to the address you see on your screen, or you can go to my channel and click on Part 1 or Part 2 and read my book right now. Or you can go to my new channel, my backup channel called William Tapley, because I am currently reading my book, Revelation Unraveled, and I am so far up to chapter number 6.